Our topic today is one that a lot of you have probably thought about and maybe even experienced either directly or indirectly through your friends: divorce. Now, I have a lot of friends who have gone through divorces, and as a friend, it can be heartbreaking to watch, doesn't matter what the circumstances are. I've heard it said that it's like experiencing death in a way: the death of a relationship, the death of the life that you thought you were going to have. So, we're going to talk about best practices today, but we're also going to talk about best ways to support people in our lives, our friends and family, in these situations. So, joining me first is my friend and esteemed family attorney here in Raleigh, North Carolina, Elizabeth Stephenson. Elizabeth, thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it. She is the managing director at New Direction Family Law. She studied social work as an undergraduate and a graduate student. She is a survivor of child sexual abuse by her biological father. And this experience, this traumatic experience, drew her to helping children. In 2000, she went on to get her law degree, and her practice focuses on divorce, child custody, and co parenting. And here's a quote that I really liked from your bio. She said, quote, "My approach is rooted in strength and compassion to ease the stress and emotional upheaval brought by separation and divorce," which I think says it all. So from knowing you, I would agree that you absolutely lead with compassion, Elizabeth. And so again, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Amanda. I'm happy to be here.
So I always learn something new about my guests when I ask them to fill out the biography form, the background form. And, I didn't know that you had been a survivor of child sexual abuse. And that obviously has defined you as a person, but also defined your career path because
Hmm.
you really care about children in these situations. And obviously many divorces involve children. So
Right.
as much as you are comfortable talking about, if you could just talk a little bit about how that has framed you as an attorney, but also as a human being.
It's so funny. People always say a lot of times, I wouldn't be where I was if I didn't experience the trauma. And I always want to say, pardon my expression, bullshit. you know, like I'm not happy it happened. I didn't want
No.
it to happen, but it did. So then you got to deal with it. So it's sort of shaped me because my family sort of fed me to the wolves and threw me under the bus. And so I had to leave, drop out of high school and leave home at 17 just to get away from it. And so it sort of framed me in the only person that's really going to be there for you 100% of the time is you. And you got to get out there and hustle and you got to make the best of it with what you have. And so that's sort of what brings me around to why I'm in family law, because that's what people who are going through separation and divorce find out. Married this person for 40 years, thought I depended on him, thought she loved me, and now I'm alone. So what do I do? So that's my job is to sort of say, with my background, I've been there. I know what it feels like. And I can help you, but you got to help me too, and you got to be strong. And so that's sort of the end result we want, is for people to come out on the other side stronger. And they do. And they really do.
Yeah, I had a person on just recently, and she had experienced human sex trafficking and had been kidnapped and had a horrible situation. And she basically said, you have a choice. You can be bitter or you can make it better.
That's right.
And what her goal and your goal, it sounds like, is to help make situations better for other people,
It
because
is.
that's really all we have in the
That's all
world
you can do, at the
is
end of the
helping
day.
other people heal, and that in essence helps us heal.
Correct.
So you went to law school and you already had this social work degree. What made you go in 2000, I think I'm going to be a lawyer, to just totally change course? And how old were you at that time?
I was 40 years old. Well,
So that
I graduated when I was 40. My philosophy was I'm going to be 40 whether I go to law school or not. So why don't we just go to law school and see what happens? And I was lobbying for a private for prevent child abuse, and nobody takes you seriously at the legislature with a social work degree. So I thought, well, I'll show all of y'all. I'll go get my law degree. And then I did my internship in family law, and I just never looked back. It was just the perfect fit for me.
That's so funny. I think I may have told you this. My mom went to law school in her late 30s, early 40s, and this was in the 70s. And it
Right.
was like unheard of, right? Like who
Absolutely.
goes to law school at that age with young children? And if she were alive today, she'd be, gosh, 84. She'd be
Right.
almost 84. So, it was a different time, but no matter when you go. I mean, it's a big commitment to go to law school.
It is. That's
Uh,
right.
So, my mom was a family lawyer, and I remember her saying, it's not just law, it's social work, it's therapy, it's part friend, it's so many things. Would you agree with that, that you have to wear a lot of hats?
I would in a way, with the caveat, we're called attorneys and counselors at law, but I'm not their counselor. I'm not their therapist. And so my first step is to get them with a therapist and with a counselor that can help them. I can see where they're coming from. I can be compassionate and empathetic, but I can't do the work for them. If they're not healthy and they're not strong and working on a path toward their future, they can't help me. I need them strong and I need them healthy so that I can advocate for them in the best way that I know how.
Yeah, and I think that's really important to set those boundaries, right? To be able
Right.
to say, I'm not your counselor. I care about what you're going through, but I need to do my job as a
Right.
lawyer,
It
as
doesn't
an
mean that I don't
attorney.
wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning worrying about them or what's going to happen, or that I don't cry at the end of the day. I just don't let them see me do that. But we love you. You really do have a personal relationship with these people over sometimes 3, 4, 5 years. You
Yeah,
get to
it's
know
hard
them.
not to. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, so, how do you begin the journey? And I'm focusing on women because that's what this podcast is about.
Right.
Obviously, you represent men and women,
Right.
but I'm focusing on women for this podcast. Uh, there's so many different scenarios, obviously, that people go through when they are talking about getting separated or divorced. What's your starting point, especially for women in midlife, like you said, who may have been married 20, 30, 40
Right.
years, and they're like, what am I going to do? How do
Right.
you begin this process with them?
We always start with an initial consultation, and they've never met me. I've never met them. And my first question to them is, tell me your story. I need to know where you've come from. I need to know what your journey has been. And sometimes, here's what I found out about a lot of people is that most folks just need to have their say and be able to tell their story. And so getting that out is painful sometimes. It takes a couple of hours sometimes. But if I don't know where you come from, I can't help you get where you need to be. So the starting point is, let's figure out what it was, and then let's take this time going forward to figure out how it can be, you know.
Do you ever talk somebody out of it or tell them that they need to go home and think about it after hearing their story? No.
No, well,
They're
no,
already
no, no, I say it in my brain, I can
yeah.
say that.
You just
But
it
it's not
doesn't come
my.
out of your mouth.
No, but at the end of the day, they're the boss. They get
Sure.
to make the decision whether they settle, how they settle, whether they go to court. All I can do is say, here are your options. Here's what will happen. Here's what might happen. And then it's their choice to make
And
that.
and it's important. One of the women that I had on the show earlier, she had talked about she had gone through a divorce, then became a family lawyer because she saw things that she wanted to change in the system. And she said, my obligation is to give them a realistic view, to
Right,
explain this is what's possible, this is what's not possible.
right.
And so I guess that's a really important thing as an attorney to lay that out.
Right. And part of it is a lot of this is so weird, but in family law, we go in cycles. People generally want to get through Christmas. They may have been thinking about getting separated, but they're going to wait. And then our phones blow up in January. And a lot of people come and all they want, this is what we always say, education is power. So if you come to me, I can tell you what might happen. And they may not be ready until I want to wait until the kids get out of school, or I need to find a place to live. So part of my job and part of my team's job is to help you figure out how to put those pieces in place. And so we sort of chunk, it is a social work sort of philosophy, is let's chunk it down into pieces and let's focus what we can do right now, and then we'll get that done, and then we'll move to the next step.
Yeah, and it's a very emotional process, right? And so at some point, I would imagine you have to help people pull away from those emotions and just look at the just different practical things they have to consider.
Right, because a lot of people, especially, I hate this word, but it's called, the grain of divorce. But a lot of people want to keep the house because they're just emotionally attached to it, but that's not in their best interest to do. And so that takes a
Financially,
long
yeah.
time to sort of, people have to process it different ways. And at the end of the day, what we say to them is, look, you can buy another house, you can start with a clean slate, make it just like you want it. And at the end they're going, you're right. I think that's a great idea and I'll work toward that. But some people don't want to do it and they want to stay, and that's perfectly okay too.
Yeah,
Especially if
it's
you have small kids and you want to stay for the children.
sure. And it's complicated too because people can't afford to live separately the way they can afford to live together, right?
Yeah, right. Two
And they
houses
have to,
cannot live as one.
right, they have to
Exactly.
hear that. They have to understand that. And let's say you've been out of the workforce, you might have to go back to the
That's
workforce.
right. That's right. That's right.
So money and kids, the two biggest things that are on the table when you're dealing with divorce, the things
Yeah,
that
especially
people
with older divorces, especially if people are near retirement age or at retirement age, you're not going to get alimony. You're going to get a portion of the retirement. You're going to get half of what you thought you two were going to live on, and at 60, you may have to go get a job, or at 45, you may have to get some support for 3 to 5 years to go back to school. But alimony is not going to last forever like it used to. It's to get you back on your feet so that you can support yourself.
Um, what are some of the top tips that you would give somebody, especially a woman, maybe a woman in midlife, about how to enter into a divorce situation?
It depends. If they, my first tip is, let's see where you want to be, and if there's no issue about domestic violence and you're safe and you've got time to get out, let's see what our plan is. So first, a lot of people don't even know what bank accounts are out there. They don't know what credit cards are out there. I don't know if my husband has a retirement and I don't know where it is. So that's the first step, is sort of logically going through, download all your bank statements, ask her how, go snooping around really, and starts doing that, because things start moving, money starts moving, so I want to know what's there at the beginning. Gather your important papers, take videos of all the things that are in your house that might somehow disappear at some point. Do not do not ask your friends for advice. Please do not do that. There are all of these groups on Facebook, and Sarah Hink, my partner, and I actually did a podcast about what we see people telling people online is absolutely no divorce is the same. What happened with your friend is not going to happen with you. And you could do some things that I can't undo. So please come. If it's not me, I don't care who you talk to, but let it be a good family law attorney. Find out what your legal rights and options are. That's the first step, I would say.
Yeah, and then as family and friends, not giving advice, but as just support.
Right.
I think it's really important that we support friends and family members who are going through this because it really is like a death.
It
And
is.
yeah, and I mean,
I
how would
think
you?
it's like I lost my husband almost 10 years ago. And I think divorce is harder because you have to see this person continually, especially if you have children.
For the
So
rest
it
of your
bring
life, yeah.
for the rest of your life, you guys are intertwined. So there's never that severing of that relationship. So you got to figure that out too, in a way.
Sure.
And as far as friends go, instead of giving them advice or this is what I did, which is fine, can I make a meal for you? Can I go pick up your kids this afternoon? You need a shoulder to cry on? Come over. We'll have a glass of wine.
So
Offer those sort
practical,
of,
yeah.
yeah, practical sort of tips. That's what people
Tangible.
really need.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much
You're
for sharing
welcome.
your expertise today. I know that, it's a difficult thing for people to go through, but if they can find an attorney like you who can be kind and compassionate, but also practical and explain the
Right.
process, I think it could be not as bad. Is the
True.
better way to look at it. So
Exactly.
again, thank you so much. How
You're
can people
welcome.
follow you and know how to reach you?
Sure. As everyone in my office is under the age of 40, unlike me, so we're all over social media. We got our Instagram account, Facebook. We have our own podcast called the Exit Strategy: Your New No Bullshit Guide to Divorce. And you can do that on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you do that. And then visit our website. You can come in for a consultation. Our website is full of information that can help people going through separation and divorce.
And you are New Direction,
New
correct? New
Direction
Direct.
Family Law. Yep.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate it. We will be back after a short break.